Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Coast-to-Coast Combat Hour. I'm your host, Matthew Hawkins, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Ed Carbajal, and weekly we are brought to you by allaccessmma.com. Check out allaccessmma.com for our video podcast, MMA stories, and MMA news. Ed, happy post-Thanksgiving. Um, Cold, winter's around the corner.
Hmm.
Um, MMA events are, we got some cool
Yeah.
round the year out. We had a couple events last weekend and a couple cool announcements. And we got your boy fight Friday on Prime, so we definitely
Yeah, man. It's
have time on.
we're entering the last month of the year, with like you said, last MMA events, last month of the year. And it looks like everybody's throwing out their best their best cards as we close out 2022 coming into the final month. PFL just closed out their season. They had their championship on Black Friday in my neck of the woods in New York. We're gonna talk about that in a bit, but we got Bellator Rising coming for New Year's Eve. Freaking these cards that we're about to talk about, UFC Orlando in in on the East Coast. Um Amazon, what is it called? One on Prime Video 5 with Rene de Ridder going for his third title in the promotion. There's a couple of grappling matches and Muay Thai matches on there that we got to look at. And yeah, man, I mean, it's a nice little break, but it's good to have get back on schedule with your sick ass. So
Yeah, coming off of a little bit of a sickness for the last week or so. But I got a little bit of a Christmas gift early this year.
hmm
Um, Maybe not everybody thinks it's the best gift ever, but I get Fedor's retirement fight in my backyard,
Yep.
Inglewood, California, February 4th. Rematch with Ryan Bader for the Bellator Heavyweight Championship.
hmm
Not the ideal matchup. I'm not going to sit here and be delusional and act like Fedor is the Fedor of 2003, 2004. But as somebody who, he's my favorite fighter of all time. The
hmm
opportunity to get to watch him in person for his retirement fight, for me is a little bit of a you know happy ending, I guess, to his career. Obviously, if he pulls off a win and gets to put a heavyweight championship around his belt, it'll probably be the greatest night of celebration that
mm.
I've had in a long time. In person, I look forward to it. Yuri Thompson, who's been on the show and is a longtime fan of Fedor, is also traveling cross country to join me for that one. So hopefully, we bring the good juju and we
hmm
get one last night of glory. But co-main event also on that night, Nemkov Yoel Romero. It has a lot of fun written on it too. I know we're getting some old guys, but we are old guys. These are the guys we've been watching for the
Yeah.
last 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah,
So
you can't act like you're not gonna be excited to watch it. Like when I posted the thing about all over, people were messaging me like, "Oh, really, Fedor?" Like, and I'm like, "Come on, dude, you act like you're not gonna watch this shit." And it's on CBS.
it's on
Like,
CBS. There you go.
yeah,
We
and
get
it's on
back.
CBS. So what the fuck? Like, you can't not watch it because it's gonna be on everywhere. If you have CBS, even a lot of streaming services just have CBS for free on it. You're
Mhm.
gonna watch it. So stop acting like you're not gonna watch it. And the
Well,
other
yeah, and
thing is
it's got
too,
two world title fights, and the other fights that they put on the main card on CBS are
yeah.
going to be loaded. It's going to be some of their biggest stars. So
And the thing about, I mean, we're talking about like just the this is Fedor closing out his career and stuff like that. One of the guys I train with, homeboy that likes that's going to be doing some stuff for the podcast, some marketing like vertical videos for us. Fala Galera, follow the YouTube channel. My boy Alex Geller. We had a long conversation about Fedor when the announcement came and just how there's just something about Fedor Emelianenko fighting. I mean, no matter what you want to say about him, maybe he doesn't have the chin or maybe he doesn't have, the reacting time. But we had a whole conversation about how like he still got those hands, dude. Like if he to look at the fight against Johnson, like there there was times where you were worried about him, but then as soon as the 1-2 landed, you knew it was over. And so if a puncher's chance is enough to make you want to watch a fight, then that's why you watch Fedor fight still. You know
I
what
think
I
it's going to
mean?
come down to who lands the punch first. In the
Yeah.
first fight, Bader landed the first punch. We've seen Bader put down by guys like Rumble Johnson. Obviously,
Hmm.
Johnson, uh, rest in peace. That was some
Yeah.
sad news that we didn't really touch on. But
Hmm.
he had a special punch. Fedor
Yeah.
also has that lightning in his hands, a little more speed than Rumble, so it's more of a combo where he usually hits you like with 1-2, and it's like good night as opposed to the one big death blow. But it's a fun fight. It's Fedor getting to do what he wants to do, going out on his terms,
Hmm.
getting a chance to avenge a loss, getting a chance to be a world champion. I mean, to me, that's as good. I mean, we don't know how the fight's going to end. Let's just hope that everybody's able to walk out of the cage. But you mentioned him having the hands. We talk all the time now when we have guys like John Brumley on the show and stuff about how we have a new generation of fighters who, from day one, when they went to kindergarten, basically became martial artists and grew up in the world of MMA and got to have lived a whole life of it. Fedor is really like the last of like the mystery fighters.
Yeah.
We had guys that used to come from Brazil. You had the Vanderleys, the Shoguns, who
Hmm.
you had to really research and get. You had the Karatanovs, and then you had the Fedors, the Vovchanchins, coming out of Ukraine, and then so you don't really have that so much anymore. Maybe a little bit with the one scene because they'll
Hmm.
pull some international fighters that are harder for American viewers to be knowledgeable about.
Hmm.
But when you talk the UFC, when you talk Bellator, basically you're talking about guys that from like their first few fights, and then they make it to the big scene. Whereas back then you would just get like, who is this? Who is this guy? Like, who is
Hmm.
this guy coming out looking like a sailor? That's how Karatanov was. And then he come out and he's knocking people's heads off, and you're like, well,
Yeah.
wait a minute, like something seems weird here. But like,
Yeah.
is this some like secret Russian fight club or something that's just taken over the world?
Mm.
So Fedor's kind of the last of that, and for me, that
Yeah.
was always the fun thing about MMA was like the mysterious fighter, the guy who's coming out of
Hmm.
the Brazilian jungle, and 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 then the storylines behind him, and then even with like Rampage Jackson in America, they always had like these weird
Hmm.
storylines behind him, and it wasn't like he was just a guy born in Memphis who was a good fighter. It was like he's from the streets, and they always had their angles that they came with, and it added a
Yeah.
storyline to the guys. Whereas now it's a little bit more cookie cutter. So I look forward to it.
Hmm.
I'm super excited. I don't have to travel per se
Hmm.
for it, more than
That's always nice. Yeah.
a little bit north for me, but I look forward to it. Tickets went on sale today through pre-sales. I'm still monitoring, not sure where I want to sit or how I want to enjoy this event,
Yeah,
but
that's a big deal, man. That's a big deal, especially again, it's on CBS, and something about Scott Coker bringing MMA to CBS. If you don't know the history, there's some
it's
magic
full
that happens
circle.
there.
I,
Yeah.
I I I traveled to Chicago for the first time it was on CBS for
Hmm.
Fedor versus Brett Rogers. That was a huge
Hmm.
deal in 2009.
Hmm.
At the time, Fedor was still the undefeated, legend heavyweight
Yeah.
pound for pound king. Um, but that was kind of his last hurrah, really. After that,
Yeah.
he started to face a little bit of a decline. So,
Yeah. So I
um,
don't care what people say. Like trying to, I mean, but you're gonna have people that make their jokes or whatever. And 2022 has been an odd year for legends in MMA and guys like Fedor and Frankie Edgar and these era fighters that of the entire sport that have had to kind of like they're human still, so that eventually they have to call it quits. And it's always just when it comes to pro sports, no matter what your sport is, when you see a guy hang up the gloves for hang up their running shoes or whatever sport it is, there's always something that there's a mark in history in the sport for that. And MMA has grown so much to see these guys still fighting at the height of where MMA is right now. I think it's just something to see, and the fact that it's going to be on CBS is shouldn't be overlooked. Um, just no matter what promotion you like to watch or who you think is better than who. Which I'm since we're talking about it, I might as well lead into with this the new era of fighters. I won championship on Prime Video. FYI, if you don't have Prime, make sure you sign up with our link in the description below so you help out the podcast a little bit because it's on Prime Video, uh, prime time here in the U.S. East Coast time. Um, Rene de Ritter is going to fight for his third title the heavyweight title over at a one championship. If you remember at the beginning of the year, it's funny that it's happening in December because at the beginning of the year, folks that listen to the podcast know I was all about this guy. We did this whole thing with fighters we want to watch, and he's going for his third title. He's still undefeated, and I feel like he's not getting the shine that he should get amongst MMA fans. You know, everybody's such UFC nut huggers. They don't pay much attention to other promotions. Um, Apparently, and Chatri Sityong is one of them. But I'm gonna get into that in a minute. But I want to just bring up the card really quick because it is wrong on their website. But like we said, they have for the light heavy. He's actually fighting for the interim heavyweight championship. I want to bring up his profile just because since I have it up, the dude is trying to get his third title, and he's literally like he went against Galvao in a grappling match and then challenged Galvao to an MMA fight, and obviously he didn't want any piece of that. But I mean, you don't see got big dudes doing submissions like this inverted triangle here on the bottom right of the screen, and then just knocking people out. I mean, he's not only is he he's just I mean judo submissions like KO power. The guy's got it all. He's young from the Netherlands. So if you're not on board with the Dutch Knight, man, you definitely want to watch this card on one on Prime Video this Friday. On top of that, for my jiu-jitsu bros, the Rutolo brothers are on it. Both of them, Kade and I know I saw Ty on there. There
Ty.
he goes. Yeah.
Both guys
So,
who I was unfamiliar with up until ADCC, to be honest with you,
mm-hmm.
and then they both really did really well at ADCC. That great promotion that they had this year in
Yeah.
Vegas. So I'm looking forward to seeing them. Um, Janet Todd, I'm slightly familiar with her. I'm not super familiar with some of these fighters. I know Roberto Soldic was one of the
Mm-hmm.
top free agents. He was a two weight 170, 185 champion in KSW, which
Mm-hmm.
is a huge Polish promotion
Mm-hmm.
for those that aren't familiar. So he signed with them. He comes over. He's fighting an undefeated Ramazan Razanov. Um, you know, the thing about the main event with the Ritter is, and I hope that we don't lose track of it, is that he is going for his third title belt
Mm-hmm.
at heavyweight against an undefeated fighter who is currently the interim champion. So it's not, MMA fans are so fickle, and we learn that
mm-hmm.
daily with losses of people who put it out there and push themselves, and eventually you lose. So there's a little bit about me that's like, you know that if the heavyweight interim champion
Mm-hmm.
who's only fought heavyweight his whole career beats a guy who's really like 185 pound 195 90 pound fighter, you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? If he were to win, which is highly possible, then we're gonna all of a
Yeah.
sudden we're gonna get this, oh, he was overrated, yada yada. There's none of that bullshit. The dude's going for his third title in three
Yeah.
different weight classes. You can only push yourself so much, and he might win, and he might become and he might go for the welterweight title, and maybe he loses that one. But at some point, you just got to give somebody credit for doing
Yeah.
what this sport was built on. The sport was built on finding out who is the best fighter in the world. We didn't have
Mm-hmm.
weight classes in the beginning. It was about who is the best fighter in the world, and this
Mm-hmm.
dude's basically throwing weight classes out the window and
Yeah.
just going, "I want to beat everybody." So
Yeah.
I mean, to me, that's what this, and I look forward to him. You're way more familiar with him than I am. You gave me a heads up about him a year ago, and I've watched him fight. I've seen the inverted triangles, but I look forward to sitting on prime time, U.S. time,
Yeah.
not having to wake up at 3 in the morning on a Friday morning or something like that.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
get to watch somebody who's really pursuing the actual
And
heart and soul of what this sport was about.
and at the last press conference they had for this event, he even said because like they talked about how this title like what are you gonna do because there are dangers to multiple people holding multiple titles and holding up divisions and he flat out just said he's like no I want to fight every other month and I plan on defending every belt I hold. So I'm just like that dude's like you don't see anybody that's just ready to throw down like that as you don't see that like UFC seems to guys get belts and then they get very I don't know, it's almost boxing-ish with the way that they're trying to pick and choose fights and this guy's just like yeah no if I'm the champ I'm defending all three belts I don't care who it is. and it's rare these days. You know what I mean? It's just rare. It's just rare
No, and I
to
mean a
see.
lot of it has to do with him staying healthy and stuff. So
Yeah,
you
yeah,
hope that that's obviously in the cards if he does get the three belts, because that's the danger, is that an injury can throw the divisions off. But he doesn't seem like also the kind of guy who's just going to hold up divisions either. He seems like I'll give up that belt and I'll just come back and win it again.
yeah,
I don't need to have that. He seems to be just all for the fight,
yeah,
which is outstanding. But
yeah.
you
And
you
then
know
and so talking about, we just talked about probably one of the baddest champions in MMA right now that nobody really talks about. So, I mean, in that sense, the Chatri Sithiong said a couple of weeks ago while we were off, actually, the week we didn't do the podcast, you know, he said that his champions could run through Bellator's champions. And, he said the only co-promotion he would do would be against the UFC. So, as much as I like one's product, but I know I'm not the only one that felt this way when I saw that, because I actually tweeted it. But not for nothing, dude. Put your money where your mouth is. Don't try to disparage Bellator. If you think your boys are really that bad, and the UFC, that we already know, the UFC just wants to be their own entity. Scott Coker has been left his door open for years for anyone that wants to have a conversation, do a co-promotion. He's doing his thing with Rising again. Now they did stuff already before already. Now here we are, New Year's Eve. They're doing the Rising versus Bellator on a Rising card under Rising rules. So, like, if you're gonna say something like that, and kind of brush off Coker and Bellator, hit him up. He's put it out there, like, anybody that wants to co-promote and you want to do business, like, not for nothing. Imagine if all these guys, like, the UFC wants to be their own thing so bad. Fine, you could be your own thing, but imagine if, like, look at what AEW does with all the rest, all their, shows. I mean, they bought, what's the one that they bought,
Ring of
that
Honor.
Ring of Honor. Like, you could do stuff like that, and look at the fanfare that stuff, like, if you do that in MMA. Like, imagine if they just started co-promoting champions versus champions, Bellator versus one versus Ryzen versus, like, how crazy. I mean, and people would probably. I mean, the fact that they're on Amazon Prime shows everybody wants a piece of some cage fighting, you know. And with the thing on CBS in February, like, that's probably going to spark a lot of broadcasters to be like, hey, maybe we should start working with these promotions a little more.
Yeah, I don't like, he's not going to co-promote with these people because you would I don't understand the whole chatter about, like, I understand hyping up your organization, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm really kind of sick about the whole, like, putting down other organizations that you like. Well, so what are you saying then? So what? So if you think Bellator sucks, then what's the point of even co-promoting with them? Like,
Mm-hmm.
why are we even wasting our time? We're seeing it right now a little bit with the PFL situation with Kyla Harrison, which we're going to get to here shortly, and the Cyborg fight.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the you got the PFL owner. Forgive me, I don't care enough to
Don
know.
Davis.
There
Yeah.
you go, Don Davis. Like, trying to set up a fight while he's bashing one of the fighters, and
Yeah.
it just doesn't make sense to me. Like, you're the promoter, like, shouldn't you be talking about how great Cyborg is?
Mm-hmm.
Like, look at this champion, one loss to Nunes, hasn't one loss in 17 years.
Mm-hmm.
A library, of highlights and violence in the cage. And and you're like, it's like, oh well, I want to fight her, but she sucks, so we're just going to prove how bad she sucks. Well, that's stupid. That's stupid, because if I
Mm-hmm.
don't know who Cyborg is, I'm listening to that and I'm like, well, why do I want to see that fight then?
Yeah.
Now, as we jump into PFL, we're talking about Kyla Harrison, who just lost to Pacheco in one of the biggest upsets, third time they had fought.
Mm-hmm.
um Harrison didn't look good. She's fighting a girl that doesn't have, like, this necessarily, in my mind at least, like, these world beating skills. She's a tough girl,
Mm-hmm.
obviously tough. She showed
Mm-hmm.
extreme toughness in this fight, because every time I looked at the screen, I saw Harrison almost in a dominating position, and then all of a sudden it would reverse, and it was reverse,
Mm-hmm.
and I just, but I'm watching PFL now, and I'm like, the day that, within hours after crowning a new women's champion for 155, they're calling out Cyborg with the girl who just lost. And to me, that screams desperation. To me, that's like, hey, our golden goose just lost. Now, all the only way I can try to salvage anything out of this person that we probably overpaid for, because we are an organization that runs tournaments. When you run tournaments, it really doesn't matter who your fighters are.
Hmm.
That's been proven. I mean, you just build fighters up. The tournament itself builds
Yeah.
the fighters. The tournament promotes the fighters. So Harrison had a chance to go to Bellator. She basically signed with Bellator, and then PFL matched the offer, which
Hmm.
voided the contract. We talked about that in the past. I just don't see it now. To me, like, if I'm Cyborg and I see her on Twitter, or whoever it is representing her on Twitter, um, having it right, she's the A side of that at this point.
Hmm.
To me, Kyla Harrison is, and I don't mean to be super disrespectful, but she's basically a glorified can crusher who's doing the right thing as far as being a prize fighter. She's
Hmm.
making money hand over fist.
Yeah.
So God bless her for that. She's probably got generational money now for the next, two generations of her family and her kids, which I know she adopted, I believe, from her sister or something. So she's obviously an extremely good person. Um, and a great person to be able to do something like that and take kids in.
Yeah, and she's a good competitor. I mean,
And
she's
a
an
good
Olympian,
competitor. Yes,
and that's
exactly.
so. Here's the thing about. I mean, and she's competitors at her level. They take the losses a little bit hard, but they also want to come back. So it looks like she wants to come back from it. But I'm gonna say this, and I'm not making any excuses for her. But I just got the vibe this whole time with her in the PFL, especially after COVID when they shelved all the fighters. She wanted to compete. She wanted to fight. I mean, they let her fight only for some reason. Right? She must have really made some people nervous over there. And then now this time when she was the week promoting the event, which I mean, I know I already pissed some people off at the PFL. I don't give a shit anyway. Don't fucking send me shit. I won't go to your shit either. But um you know they they're just not. She even said when she talked to Helwani the week of the Wednesday before the event, and talking about the pay-per-view, she was like, I wish they would have promoted it better, like maybe mention it at the beginning of the season. You're gonna do, like, who do you know that bought this pay-per-view, like, not for nothing, you know what I mean, like it wasn't exactly trending that night, you know what I mean, like, I don't know how many buys they did because it was through ESPN Plus, but because it's that whole deal. But I mean, I had people the day after asking me, "Hey, when's the Kayla fight?" And I'm like, "It already happened." And they were just like, "Oh, these guys I train with that follow the sport." They were like, "Oh, well, who won?" And I just told them, and they're like surprised or whatever. But I think the fact that she didn't win and the way that she lost, I honestly think there was a lot. There's a lot going on. I don't think she wants to be there anymore. She obviously wants to fight Cyborg or Nunez or whomever. She wants to fight the toughest people she can fight. And I think that pigeonholing of keeping her there and keeping her, like you said, as their golden goose, I honestly think that had a heavy mental effect on her. And I mean, don't I wouldn't be surprised if she's just like not, you know, it takes away the fire for someone, especially a competitor like her. When the business side of things starts screwing shit up like that, she's probably just kind of like, oh God, what, whatever the fuck ever. You know what I mean?
How, a huge part of MMA is in talking to people too is a mental game. You
Hmm.
have to be on your game mentally in order to physically prepare for what it takes to be in there. And I agree with you. The minute you started talking, I knew where you were going with this. Her
Hmm.
her head couldn't have been in it. She was fighting a girl who she's already beat twice, who
Hmm.
she's dominated twice. I
Yeah.
mean, like, basically whitewashed twice in two matches. Um, doesn't really have a whole lot to gain other than, I mean, obviously the $1 million is nice, but you
Hmm.
can just see that that's not enough of a motivating factor.
And
She
let me tell
clearly,
you something else about the PFL, because again, like, I wasn't really happy with the way they promoted anything this season. The post fight press conference. Do you know when they started putting that on their YouTube channel? Yesterday. That shit was over. Like, you want trending news articles and stuff. You should have had that up Saturday morning.
well, considering that they put the pay per view on YouTube the next day after they charged people for it, was a bit of an insult in itself. And anybody who paid for it and saw that is probably
Uh,
thinking to themselves, well, next time they have a pay per view, I'll just wait. I'll just go to bed early, wake up, and then watch it on YouTube in the morning. So that's not a
yeah.
smart move either.
Yeah,
That's a
I
slap
don't
in
know
the
what's
face
going
to
on.
the people that pay for it.
And they get their money from these investing rounds, and what's his name, the baseball guy, Hernandez, Aaron Rodriguez, one of those like there's a lot of Kevin Hart, they get these like Wiz Khalifa, all these people that are invested in the promotion. It's like, how do they sell these guys on getting money from them? And then you look at the end product. I mean, are they just showing it to them in a vacuum? I to me it's just really weird. And I'm saying it pissed off because I really like the PFL, the format, the seasonal format. I think it's the most fair, even way to have competitors compete in the sport. But the business side of it seems to be really fucked up.
Well,
So
this season, listen. Nobody supported PFL more than you when they started. You
yeah,
were there. You covered their events. Like I said, as a
went to a
fan, I
lot of their
attended World
events.
Series of
Yeah,
Fighting one.
yeah.
So I covered a World Series of Fighting 30 or something like that before they became PFL. So I was involved with going to the events, doing some coverage for them when Cepho and Boss Rutan and those guys were really kind of front and center for the organization. Then they became the PFL, and it became a little bit, the tournaments were cool. We loved that. That was a great idea. It was something that we've always asked for. The point
Hmm.
system was kind of cool, kind of worked. Everything worked for a couple seasons. Developed some good fighters. Made
Hmm.
Kyle Harrison a borderline, like on the peak of breaking out and becoming a worldwide star who you
And I,
might
th-
start
I,
to see.
I think she still is. I
I
think
think
she
she
still has,
definitely has
yeah.
potential. She's an
But
Olympic medalist. Like,
yeah,
there's no doubt about it. Like you said,
she
she's
needs
an
to get out
extreme
of
competitor.
there. She need
But
They need to cut
but
her loose so she can do what
Yep.
she wants to
But
do.
this season started off with them matching her contract when obviously she wanted to leave to go fight
Hmm.
other people to not
Yeah.
have to not have to fight Pacheco for a third time. And then you had the circus act where they went international in the middle of the COVID thing and in the middle of a war going on where people aren't allowed in certain countries, and you throw off the whole thing. You basically create a whole new bracket of fighters, who and it throws the whole tournaments into chaos. And then you decide, okay, our next move is going to be a pay per view on Black Friday. Listen,
Hmm.
for me and you, cool. Like, we're not necessarily out at Macy's doing shopping,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
like, historically, like Black Friday, you're not chilling at home. You're out and about. You're out drinking with the homies.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
like
yeah.
it's kind of a day. It's a day off work for 90. I don't know the percentage, but a huge population doesn't work the day after Thanksgiving.
So
Um,
yeah, so they're
so
probably
it
catching
just
up. But
seemed
yeah,
kind of
I
like
mean,
a
I
really
was, yeah.
weird thing. Like, Saturday would have made more sense to me. Like, hey, you had Thanksgiving, you survived Black Friday,
Hmm.
kick back and enjoy PFL on Saturday night. Like, to me that would have made a little bit more sense. Um, so I don't know where they're going, but like, I know that I know they were having trouble selling tickets. I know that they were dropping ticket prices. I know they were sending out emails left and right about discounted tickets. Um, I think we should get over promoting being at MSG and then being in the arena in the theater. I mean, I like the theater. I've seen you said you like the theater. I've never watched an event there. I went to a weigh-in there for UFC, but I've seen all other people online who know what they're talking about, saying they like to watch fights at the theater. But I think that like loses a little bit of its shine. Like, let's just stand on you being the PFL, having your fighters, promote your fighters, and let's just see how that goes. Let's not
Hmm.
be reaching out to other organizations. Now, maybe no,
And the and the, and the promotion for everything was buy the pay per view. By the way, you didn't say. I mean, if you had to give tickets away, it's because you were trying to sell was a pay per view. Like, everything you saw about it was buy the pay per view. I mean, unless you're walking past there, because I know they like to have people outside with signs and stuff about the fights of the day of. Like, I don't know. I don't know what's going on over there. I know a lot of names have been circled and changed in and out as long as the PFL has been around or rebranded as a PFL. But I mean, 2023 is going to be interesting. I know they already got a lot of good fighters signed for 2023. Um, but we'll see what happens, man. I mean, I hope they just reassess, you know, reassess how they just promote stuff and I don't
I'd
know.
like to see him. I'd like to see him get
It's,
away
it's very
from
top ranked
from s-
boxing ish. Yeah.
I'd like to see him get away from signing some of the guys like Pettis and McDonald, because like I feel like the one thing we talk about like building a name for younger fighters
Mm-hmm.
is establish your name outside of the UFC, and then you get the big payday when you get in the UFC.
Mm-hmm.
Don't go to the UFC for the $10,000 contract. Wait, go win outside the UFC where the UFC has to write you a check with, you know, extra zeros on it. Like let's like that. And to me, you could really develop like, I'm not saying you get guys who are just 1-0 or 2-0, but get some guys who've won a little bit on the regional scene, put them in this tournament, let them build their name, give them $1 million check, and then all of a sudden they hold some of the cards. All of a
Mm-hmm.
sudden you've created a guy who doesn't have to go to the UFC for $10,000. Let the UFC call him up and go, "Hey, dude, we know you're a millionaire now. Like you're not going to accept 10 and 10. Let's work on a real contract. Let's work on building you into the star that PFL created. Now we're going to put you on the worldwide stage and and grow and have a organic built fighter as opposed to like a Pettis. And those guys haven't made checks. Like they're not winning. McDonald, Pettis, those guys haven't won the tournaments,
Mm-hmm.
but they're kind of going over there and they're kind of taking the shine away. And then they go out there and they lose, and you're kind of like, well, we all love Anthony Pettis, we all love Rory McDonald, but their best days are 5 years in the past.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe like let's not try to build off of those guys. Let's to be a little bit more organic and give me a new name. Like I know that's the what Psy,
Yeah,
Psy.
Sadabusi. Yeah, yeah,
He's been there every damn season, and
yeah,
this year
yeah.
he won the million, which
I
is
was actually
great.
happy to see that. Yeah.
Happy for him. He's grinded away. It was nice to see, but at the same time, it's kind of like give me some new blood. Like give me
Mm-hmm.
something. Like tell me you got a guy who's undefeated from Poland. Like
Or
tell
look,
me
I
like.
mean, that look at they have they're the only MMA promotion that has a 155 women's division. Maybe do a season like change up your weight classes too. Maybe do a women's flyweight or you know what I mean, or the 165-pound division that a lot of other fighters wish was out there that no one else will do except Eagle FC.
Mhm.
Like if you want to be different, do it unique, do it for one season, and I bet you, I mean, not for nothing, you'll get a lot of people because when they first came out, a lot of people were like, PFL's where it's at, PFL's where it's at, and then COVID hit, and I don't know what the hell happened. Some like brainy and disease took over the executive. I don't know what the hell. I already know I buried myself with them, so that's why I don't give a fuck.
But like you said, some of the highlights that came out of the show.
Yeah.
Olivia Mercier
Hmm.
winning $1 million. Cool for him, man.
Yeah.
Grinded in the UFC, was successful in the UFC, but went for the paycheck, got it, but wasn't the huge name, wasn't a former world champion. Became a champion. Like you said, we
Hmm.
said Psy, um, Brendan Lugain, who the UFC Dana White threw to the side, said he tried for a takedown despite being one of the most exciting fighters on the
Hmm.
Contender Series. Goes out there. Had he fought in the UFC, he probably would have pocketed it. If he won all of his fights, he'd probably have about 240K in the bank.
Yeah.
He wins $1 million.
Yeah. Plus the money he made while he was fighting there, so it's
Plus
like,
the other fights. So
yeah, yeah.
he probably banked 1.2 million.
Hmm.
If you're getting 40, $50,000 for the
I mean,
preliminary fights
the,
as you
the, the
build
only
up
thing
to the
that
tournament.
sucks is like I know every fighter that fights in New York City always complains about the tax man coming for their shit. So, but either way, he still made a lot of money.
Yeah, but I mean that's some of the highlights. Those are the guys
Yeah.
that they built now, like that weren't stars in other organizations, but the guys that they can kind of build off of now,
Hmm.
and that's kind of cool. So those are some highlights. We're gonna jump into the UFC fight night, the top couple fights on the card because it's nice to see them getting out of the Apex and getting out to an arena again.
In
First time since the
Orlando,
San
sunny
Diego, so in Orlando.
Orlando.
But one thing, a note that we got while the last couple of weeks, we did lose the main event for next week's pay per view. Glover
Oh
Teixeira,
yeah.
Yuri Prohaska. Yuri apparently suffers pretty bad shoulder injury, gives up the belt. A little bit of confusion why Glover gets kind of thrown to the side. Seems like this is some more UFC kind of like, you know,
Yeah. Endeavor
it's a
Endeavor
trophy.
moves.
It's a
Yeah.
trophy. It takes away a little bit from the light heavyweight championship when you tell Glover that he has to take a seat to the guy he beat,
Hmm.
and a number one, number two contender. Um, Seems odd. Seems like they try to force it. Um, but ticket sales weren't doing great for that show. You always wonder if that makes it easier for them to change stuff up. Um, if you're not selling tickets, then why pay Glover? I'm sure Glover makes more than Jan and
Hmm.
uh, Ankilev. Um, so it's conspiracy stuff, but it just seems odd that you'd kick a guy like Glover to the curb. We talk about older fighters. Dude doesn't have
Yeah.
a lot of years left. Seems like
No,
the
and
shit
that's the
he
thing. It's
deserved.
it's it's funny how in MMA, like the older, more popular fighter, um, what is this? What is Kevin Nicholson esoteric breakdowns like that PFL roasting is one reason I like C2C Combat Hour. Also, hey, well, you're welcome, Kevin. I mean, sometimes I can't. Sometimes I'll probably regret saying it later, but whatever.
No, we love the
Um,
sport so much that when we see stuff that just
yeah,
doesn't make
it's,
sense, we get emotional and we like to get a little bit of aggressive with our
yeah,
complaining. Plus, neither of us really care. We're kind of
yeah,
we're old school heads in this sport, so
yeah,
it's like, what are you gonna do?
yeah.
You gonna
It's
ban me from
it ain't my
UFC
full
events?
time thing. Yeah, it's not
you
like
know,
it's my full time thing. But anyway, yeah. So Orlando coming up. Let me bring up the card so we can take it.
Here we
It's
go.
actually
Let's get a positive UFC getting on the road. First time since San
it's
Diego.
actually a pretty dope card too.
Deep
If
card for a fight night. How fight night cards were prior to COVID and the Apex
and ESPN
allowing the
Plus
UFC just
and
to put out King of the Cage cards. So this is a fight night card, and
hmm
I like the main event because it's not a fight that means a whole lot, but it's just a cool fight.
hmm
Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, Kevin Holland, two exciting all action fighters that it like I said, there's no title on the line. There's no number one contendership on the line here. Doesn't really matter who wins or who loses, but it's a fun fight that is that we should have more of. We should have more of this fight. The co-main event also falls into that same bracket. Brian Barberina, Dos
hmm
Anjos. Obviously, Barberina coming off of his win over Lawler, coming off of his win over Matt Brown. He's on a nice run, so it means something for him as he's kind of ascending in his career.
hmm
But he's got his hands full with Dos Anjos,
yeah,
who brings it every single time and is
yeah.
never an easy out.
RDA is the guy. Like I remember Dana White, even like it was recently, maybe the last 2 years. Dana White even said he was like, well, when I want to see what a guy really has, I put him against RDA, and it's like, well, yeah, I mean the dude's problems. um, there's so many good fights on this card. I mean, Tai Tuivasa versus Sergey
As a
Pavlovich.
heavyweight fan, that fight's got me going right there. I
hmm
mean, you got number 4 versus 5 at heavyweight. Heavyweight division's a little bit, you know, confusing now. But that's that. Pavlovich. You know, uh, one loss, Alistair Overeem. Obviously, that's nothing to be sad about or
Yeah.
to discount a fighter for. So he has a little bit of a possible future as far as being
Oh,
somebody that we're
you
going to
know
see a
who's
lot of.
on this card too? No, it's just hitting me now. I want to see it. Is he on here? I think he's fighting on this card. Yeah, he is. They gave him a silhouette. Francis Marshall's out of Pellegrino MMA, right out of Jersey. It's his first fight. He came off Contender Series, so make sure you keep an eye out for that kid because he is a killer. So I'm definitely gonna be tuned into this. I mean, I bet you they're doing something down at Pellegrino to watch this fight. But yeah, yeah, this is a good card.
Natan Levy, who we interviewed when he was after his first pro fight,
Yeah,
probably one of the first podcasts ever to have him on. He's made a
great
name for
fighter.
himself. Great
Yeah,
fighter, fun fighter. He's on the card. A little bit low on the card, honestly. But there's names on this card. When you get a fight night where we get back to
yeah,
where we
it's
have
so
names on the card,
stacked. It's like
Tracy
look at
Cortez, Amanda
this is,
Ribas,
and
good
that's on the
fight.
prelims. Yeah,
I mean, that's if this is an Apex card, that's the co-main event.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So like that's kind of where we're. I mean, there's a lot of co-main events to the Apex card. If we're hell, that might be the main event. I mean, some of these main
yeah,
events we've seen fairly recently are nothing to
yeah,
don't exactly make you leave. Darren Elkins, the damage a lot of times because he gets damaged, but my God, the guy brings it
yeah.
every fight. Michael Johnson, long time. Always, you never know what you're going to get with Michael Johnson. You're going to get a
hmm
guy who could be a world champion in a fight, or you're going to get a guy who, against Takasi, who again, I mean, this is Holtzman Guida. This is
hmm
the classic fight night
Yeah,
card. So I look forward to it. This is going to be one. It's on ESPN, which is a
yeah,
plus. Not to play on words, but is a plus for anybody that doesn't want to pay extra money
yeah.
to enjoy the sport. Dakota, Angela
Angela
Hill,
Hill.
I mean, there's a lot to be said here. I didn't even know about the
Yeah, they
Cody
are
Azrael
bringing.
card, so
Yeah,
that the fight that's a cool fight.
yeah.
When I
These are all
was
the
on,
prelims too. I mean, this is definitely like they're bringing some serious heat to Orlando. I mean, this is something that is going to be sold out. You don't have to worry about speculating on them like just trying to draw up attention for the card. Like this is a card. I mean, if I were able to fly to Orlando to watch this, because I got my peoples in Florida, I definitely would do that.
no, like I said, it's a fun fight. It's one of the best fight night cards we've seen in a long time. The San Diego card
Hmm.
had some good fights. This is much, much deeper. So
Hmm.
hopefully this is a trend heading into 2023 where the UFC gets back on the road. Um, we criticize the UFC just like we criticize PFL and everybody else, but when they get on the road and when they put these fight cards and we get fight cards like this 2-3 times a month along
Hmm.
with a pay-per-view, that's really when the sport's really thriving because you start
Hmm.
building fights. You start, some, like I said, there's not much up this main event that really creates anything other than another fun fight maybe down the line. We'd all love to see Stephen Thompson, at least on the show. At least me, I'd love to see him get a world title. But reality is he's probably 3-4 fight win streak away. And at his age, I don't know if we're going to see that with him
This is
fighting.
actually a really good matchup, though. These
Oh,
two
it's a
guys.
it's a it's a great matchup. There's not there's I mean, I imagine we're gonna see some fun stuff on the
Hmm.
feet. And
Hmm.
if it hits the ground, neither of them are necessarily savants on the ground. Although
Hmm.
Holland has had some fun, wild stuff. He had
Yeah.
the up kick to
Yeah,
Ja
look
or
at
the
the
up
odds. They,
punch
they
to
have
Docker.
Thompson as a plus 120 underdog, and he's minus one. Holland's minus 140. I mean, I don't disagree with those odds.
No, I think it's fair odds. You go with the younger fighter, the guy who's taking less damage. Um, I wouldn't be surprised to maybe it all depends on what's Wonder Boy's attitude is. I can almost see him kind of using maybe a wrestling base a little bit. Because Holland does pull some wild stuff out, but
Hmm.
he also can, I think, be controlled on the ground. So
Hmm.
Thompson might pull out that veteran move, kind of grind out a little bit, but I think we're in for some fun stand up with some flashy stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely gonna be and trending on Saturday night for sure. I for one will be in my toasty apartment, ready to watch it with a few beers and the Twitter hashtag ready to go. So um
So yeah, I mean that's kind of the highlight. There was a BKFC also on Saturday. Um,
yeah.
there you go.
It's funny you said that. It's funny you said that, Kevin. Kevin Nicholson writes in, can't wait for Guida to pollute the cage with his between the round belches. I literally said that to Matt before we started recording and we were looking at the card. I was like, oh, look, Clay Guida's going to be there burping in between rounds. So it's funny that that's how he's known. But I mean, that's why we like Clay Guida outside of his no quit attitude. He's also funny to watch in the cage. But yeah,
Speaking of belching, my throat's starting to catch up with me, folks. Done a lot of talking here. That's been part of my sickness was a rough throat. So I think I'm probably fading out here, but I think we pretty much got in what we were trying to talk about this week.
mhm,
Um, don't miss PFL. Don't miss the Ritter on Friday. Like I said, Holland Thompson, BKFC on Saturday. And I'm sure there's a bunch of other stuff on. Check out Grabaka Hitman, who we always hype up on Twitter
yeah,
if you really want to look for something deep. But I think that those will be fights. I believe there's 2 title fights on the BKFC card.
one championship. You said PFL. You meant
Oh,
one
I'm sorry,
championship.
one championship on Friday on Amazon.
Amazon Prime,
Um, I think
Prime
there's a
Video.
lot. I think there's on Prime Video. So I mean, again, you said our links in
Hmm.
our bio for anybody that doesn't have it. But yeah, I'm gonna take us out right now. Fans can check us out at Combat Hour on Twitter, Coast to Coast Combat Hour on Instagram. Follow me, Matthew Hawkins, at MMA Hawk 21 on Twitter and Instagram. Follow Ed at Carbazol on Twitter, Carb Beerzol on Instagram, and Old Head Carb on Twitch. And again, we're brought to you weekly by allaccessmma.com. Check out allaccessmma.com for our video podcast, MMA news, and MMA stories. Look forward to it, man. It's going to be fun,
Hmm.
man. DeRitter, Thompson, Holland, bare
Yeah,
knuckle.
boy, will I
Uh,
feel stupid next week if he loses. But
But
he
that's what I'm
bet.
saying.
I
Don't.
don't.
It's the heavyweight title.
Yeah,
No,
yeah, yeah.
all I do at that point is look forward to his defense of the other 2 belts that he holds. I
No, if
mean,
he wins, people better start recognizing. I mean, I just saw as we were writing, MMA Junkie published like the snippets of the press conference, and they have his face on the cover. So that lets you know people are starting to listen to what I say on this thing. I mean, Nolan King does work there, and he's a friend of mine. He is the only person that recognized when my interview with Scott Coker when he talked about the Horiguchi Rising when the whole Bellator Rising thing first started. So, um, they got good people over there at MMA Junkies. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. Thank you for listening. Thank you, Kevin, for the comments. We really appreciate it. Have a good night, everyone, and enjoy the weekend.
Peace.